Good morning, everybody. So I'm gonna grab my notes up here. My name's Amáda Simula, and I'll be the mod today. Hold on. Sorry, I just have some notes. So today, welcome to our Everyone's a Leader Embracing Advocacy in Fandom. We have 3 amazing panelists here with me. I also think I'm amazing, but yes, 3 people with. So I also have a panel on geeks in government, which is similar, and that's a presentation. So this is kind of the same, like leadership, but following Fandom. So before we go into introductions, or actually no, I'd like to go introductions first. So if you could say to our guests up here, and we'll start with Kerry on my left, something that you are like personally working on in the advocacy realm, in the real world. And we'll start with you, Kerry.
Yeah. So I have done a lot in the Our Flag Means Death fandom online, and we spent a lot of time working on a fundraiser for Rainbow Youth in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I have also been working on some Palestine related aid projects in my hometown in Rochester.
Cool. Thank you. I'll go last, so Ms. Shannan.
Oh, hi everybody. A lot of my background is in performance, and I'm a comedian, and so my advocacy right now, First, I'm very fortunate that I'm a benefit auctioneer, so I get to help a lot of organizations with their fundraising, and I got additional certifications and training to really help them figure out how to maximize that. But my primary project is I have a residency and I do a show called Comedy Through the Chaos, where we use comedy as more of a mental wellness conversation starter. So we have a different chaos that we talk about every episode, that show. It was a web series, so I'm not used to saying episode, where we hopefully can build community and encourage people to go, hey, you don't need to feel alone, because we're talking about mental wellness, we're talking about addiction and recovery, we're talking about, like the show we're doing tonight is about identity, so we'll see what the performers come up with. I know the stories that I'm telling, and so it's just a way to go, oh wait, you can showcase what it is, and we can do it through humor and encourage people to have all of the emotions all at the same time. So that is what I am working on out in the real world.
Awesome, thank you.
Hello. Yes, some of the things I am working on is increasing diversity in STEM. So I work as an engineer, and it's not always diverse, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we increase that, and taking a step back and so actively working on exposing different communities to STEM and encouraging them and showing them all these different options. And then also actively involved in empowering single mothers going for education, and kind of along the same lines, right? Showing them options in STEM and just showing them the strength and power that comes from just being in the situation of being a single mother in that situation, where you can, the skills that you have and learn are very important and transferable anywhere. So realizing the power in that.
Cool. Are you a single mother?
Yes, so I had my daughter pretty early on and went to college through that. So when I finished my engineering degree, my daughter was along my side the whole way, and 5 years old when I finished that degree. So yeah.
Way to go. Way to go.
Yeah, so now...
She went up to class too. You should tell us.
Yes, oh, we're not going to go too deep in stories. I have so many great stories from that. But then being actively involved in the Jeremiah program, which I found out a year before I finished school, and that is single mothers going to school. And
the other thing that's wonderful about it is that they also help stabilize housing for single mothers as they're going through the educational process, and create a community for, hopefully, so you can have that community for your kids as well. I do their fun. I've done their fundraising for the last 3 years, and that was what I really appreciated about what the Jeremiah program does as well, is stabilizing that whole family structure and helping model, and I'm sure we'll talk about this throughout the panel, but helping model even for, you know, all of the kids that are there, that yes, you can still achieve in this education even though you're in a slightly different route than what happens in sitcoms. So they'll know, and also providing respite and resources for the moms, so they can go while you're studying, your kids you're in a safe, stable environment so that you can finish what you're doing. And so it really does give the ability, and I believe what they do in some other programs that do this is that it helps stabilize 2 generations, and that's important. Is going, both of them are stable.
Yeah, you can't have the headspace to be learning if you're stressing about housing. So that is super awesome.
Yes, and even the reframing of the situation where, you know, a lot of people going through the program are now proud to be single mothers and can recognize the strength and power in that and the skills they take away. So I'm very fortunate that I've recently joined the board of that. So now to pull in and have all that and continue to.
You'll see me this fall.
Listen to all our advocacy up here. So my name is, as I said, Amáda Márquez Simula. I'm the mayor of Columbia Heights, as well as an advocate. So I'm really kind of in the sci-fi world, geek world. I am wearing my Confluence t-shirt, which is a convention for our Black and Brown Indigenous people of color here in the Twin Cities, but everyone's welcome. And so working on that. Ms. Shannan just did a panel last Saturday for the event. And it's going to be in October, but there's a few other events that are coming up to help support the community. I'm also in the real world. I helped start our Columbia Heights Pride Festival, and the LGBTQ community is really important to me to support as an ally. And I mean, as mayor, I'm doing a lot of different things, but I think those will be my big ones to say.
How long have you been mayor?
This is my 4th year.
Congratulations.
So I'm in again this year, so thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So to bring it to kind of the topic, I have like the theme of convergence is it like all welcome? Is that what it is?
Everyone's invited.
Everyone's invited. There you go. Everyone's invited. I wrote it down. Everyone is invited, and so some of the things we're going to talk about is just like building empathy as a part of advocacy, building community, and then how do we take this to be inclusive in our community. So way to start is I want everyone here to work on building our community, and I'd like you to walk over and talk to somebody you didn't come with and share your name and something that you are passionate about, that you want to advocate for, or if you are already advocating for. So we're going to take like 2 minutes, and this is how we build community. So if you could just go do this, and we'll have our own little like, how we're supporting each other. So, yes. Hi. I'm so blushy. I'm like, I'm not how are you?
We're not.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you say?
We did.
I just went to Mall the other day because I'm not from here.
Yes.
I can only take the filter of Indigenous art exhibit. I need that life practical sense of curate or at least address lies within exploration. And like I took a picture of the plaque that like talked about it because it was so cool. I was like, this is what it needs to be, right? Because I have mixed feelings about places like Minneapolis because of that, right? Yeah. Okay. How did we get these artifacts? Like, where do they belong? But then also, how do we teach people about different cultures if we don't have places? Right. And so all of those things relate to that. I would say I work at UW-Madison. And so, like, one of the things that I think about a lot is, student health. Yeah, and I'm a so one of my passions is equitable.
And so, like, a lot of times
And really had sort of a cognitive shift in education. So much of it it's an opportunity. Everyone has the opportunity.
All right, let's bring everyone back to the group. Back to the panel, I should bring it up. So during council meetings, when I have a hard time getting people's attention, I just start singing. So that's what I do to help like get people on board. So there's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright gold. Okay, everyone's listening now. All right, keep going. That's what I do at council meetings. Instead of being like, everybody listen, I just start singing, and then people are like, hold on, who's singing? Oh, and then they just naturally quiet down.
You're that friend again now. I have other friends that do that, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'll tell you some jokes, but people still might not listen.
So thank you so much. I hope that that was felt good for everybody to get out there. So for our panelists, my first thought is, sorry. So, this is my first time putting notes on my phone, and now I'm thinking this was not the best idea. So I talked about how advocacy starts with empathy, and what are some examples of empathy that you see in fandom that really, like motivates those leaders in our fandom to move forward. I think about like, for example, okay, now I'm drawing a blank.
I'll use this example just because there's a viral clip going right now with Regency Page, who is talking about systemic racism and unbuilding and dismantling some of these things. And part of the reason why the clip is, one, it's him. And so you're like, okay, this is a very lovely package that is communicating this message. But it's not a message that a lot of people have said before. It's talking about when you're saying, well, I'm not the one that actually had slaves or did any of these things. Why should I, be held accountable for this stuff? And he's saying in this clip about how we're not saying that you did, but you are benefiting from the fact that your great-grandparents and everybody did, and we're asking you to let some of that privilege go. And so the way that he does it, because it's incredibly communicated in a phase of ease and in a very, Jean Page type way to do it. But I think it's important that we acknowledge that part of the reason why people do that is he does not have to talk about it, but the fact that he does makes it a more bite-sized, palatable way for some people to go, oh, I did it. So I think there's some things like that where if you're in your version of a safe or a position of height and power, that being able to slip it in a way where it's like, yeah, not calling anybody bad, just calling you out on some stuff that you may not have thought. And so I think he's a good example right now, because he'd just be like living that Bridgerton life, just being cool and not taking a stand, which would probably be easier. Because then you don't have to worry, am I running off a fan? Is somebody at the network gonna say this? Is somebody is my agent gonna go, now there's this backlash or this boomerang effect? And I think that that's a difficult choice to make sometimes when you're a performer, and I appreciated him doing it.
Yeah, awesome. In real life, yes. Anyone else? Yes.
I was going to say, so as far as tying empathy to fandom and how that drives towards advocacy, I think building off of the source material that the fandom is based on can be really a useful tool. So finding out things that are either tied directly to the source material. For example, in Our Flag Means Death, there's a lot of queer characters, so tying it directly to queer struggles or advocacy outside of the show is a really easy way to kind of tie things together and make it feel important and relevant to the fan base. There's also a character who loses a limb in the second season, so advocating for or raising money for amputees. There's a great organization that we worked with there as well. And so being able to tie it just directly to the source material is a really easy way to start getting involved with advocacy and fandom. Other things, and then outside of that, even things that are kind of peripherally related. So finding out what the community, what the fandom as a community is invested in. can also be, even if it's not directly tied, can also be good. Sometimes that involves the creators that are behind the scenes, or the showrunner, the actors. If they have projects that they are passionate about and they have supported as well, sometimes that's an easy way to tie it directly to it. So saying, this person supports this, this group, and as a community, if you identify with that, you can also use that as a tool to kind of push towards building that connection.
Very cool. Yes.
Yeah. So I think about shows like Doctor Who that have always been known for having diversity in the cast and showing kind of in mainstream spaces that these characters that aren't often there, right? And then even the writing and how they portray it. And then you talked a little bit about talking about it and having those tough conversations. I think about the show 13 Reasons Why in their new season, where they're talking about suicide in a very real way and breaking it down on steps you can take and conversations you can have, so people that are drawn towards and seeing that are seeing different options. And then things that are less common that we're bringing back into these shows, including the diversity and having those conversations and having all sorts of different characters is really encouraging.
I think when I'm thinking about empathy too, I'm thinking in the character storyline, like a couple of things like in Star Wars and the new Skywalker series with Finn, and he's a victim as a stormtrooper, where he is in a place of trauma with all these other stormtroopers that have been rounded up as children to fight in this war. And so as he grows as a character, the empathy he sees for the damage that's being done makes him want to lead in that storyline. I think he was totally robbed, that didn't keep staying that way, but very frustrating. But in the first one though, just to see him kind of grow as a leader, even though we're very aware that in the movie, Rey is the protagonist. She is like the main leader. She's the one that's going to be taking things home. He is definitely like evolving as a leader, and I think that really started from him having that moment of empathy of this is wrong and looking around and wanting to step up. And like you said, kind of in the real world as well, but in our storylines of fandom too, like being a leader means you can't do what's easy. And the easier thing would have just like been to like, and he kept wanting to be doing the easy thing, like, no, we should go the other way, away from the Empire. And Rey was one who kept saying, no, we have to, help people. But, in the long story short, but yeah, he was like, I need to be challenged.
And when I'm looking at even the title of our panel about everyone's a leader, I think that what you're bringing up, Amáda, is a really wonderful entry into the topic at hand, where yes, Rey was willing and did that first, but Finn didn't see himself as, I don't have the skill set, I don't have the background, I don't have the history, I'm not the leader, I wouldn't be the leader. But going, no, in this group, you actually are, because as wonderful as Rey is as the hero and the main driving force, you do need other people that are like, yeah, but in your pocket, you are the one that people look up to. You can tell this story from an authentic place, and you deserve to be the hero in this subgroup or in this group. And I don't think that our friends always see that, where you showing up and being bold and being existing and coming to a thing that's really uncomfortable because you don't know a lot of people and all this stuff, you are a leader. By going, I decided to do this because it's important to me, or I like this fandom, or I want to go find like-minded people. That's still leading by going, oh, I went, and so you can go tell other people, oh yeah, there's this cool thing. And I figured out how to fit in, you fit in too.
Yeah, did you want to add something?
I have something, but
okay, that kind of brings me to the next part. I feel like in advocacy is building community, and like you just said about Finn being like, and Rey bringing him on board, and it ties into the fandom of CONvergence, as you said. So thinking like other ways that you can think of in different storylines or fandom about how these, I would say almost like a side character, but they start to embrace that leadership. I think of like Fellowship of the Ring, you know, Frodo is the person who's like, okay, you're gonna be the ring bearer, you are the one carrying the weight. But he couldn't do it without the fellowship, and had to create that community to get the job done. And then there's this side quest of people, but everyone's is just as important. So wondering if we have any.
I was thinking the same
Okay,
thing.
yeah, like a community of like gathering those communities to get the work done.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think an important part of advocacy in fandom is listening to other people and listening to other voices, and then becoming an expert in your own space. Following people who have that unique perspective and are an expert. So I follow a number of, one of the main characters in Our Flag Means Death is Indigenous, and I follow a lot of my friends are Indigenous as well. And so my role in that niche that I feel I can be a leader is by listening to them and learning from them, and hearing what they're saying about the portrayal, about the characterization, anything, the importance of the character, and then bringing that back to other spaces that I'm in that don't necessarily have their voice, and being careful not to speak over them and speak for them, but uplifting the things that they're saying when they're not there to say it in spaces that I'm very white. I have spaces that are very, very white that I exist in. And so being able to be aware and just hold that education that I'm working on, being able to bring that to those spaces and just be an advocate, even in a small way, to say, here's what I've observed, here's what I'm noticing, your prejudice, or and just kind of pushing in that direction without trying to speak over those people.
And are you inspired by the fandom of like seeing that happen? You're
Yeah.
like kind of accurate subconsciously. You're like, oh, I can do that. Like I'm seeing it happen in fandom. I can see it happening in me.
Yeah. So I love that you were talking about that. We've been talking about kind of like side characters, because that's how I feel in a lot of. I mean, I feel like I can be, at the forefront of LGBTQ advocacy because I'm queer, but. I also want to help be a leader in other areas, in places that I can be sort of a side character, where I'm listening to the people who are the leaders in that area, and then supporting them in the way that I can. And I
like we're taking the word ally and side character, or like I'm like, ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you as well. And it's, what does a leader look like? And sometimes a leader is part of the team, and so you don't have to be the one that's always like, I led the panel. You have, so I think sometimes we use that term leader so specifically. So if you're not moderating the panel, you're not leading, which isn't necessarily the case, because sometimes you just deflecting off of someone else who's being attacked, you're still the leader in that group because you're modeling the behavior that the rest of them need to take. And it is interesting when especially when we're in this world of a variety of different marginalized communities, it does get very exhausting after a while to go, well, I have to be the voice of all of the overlapping layers of who I am as a human being. Yeah. And so I usually encourage people to go, you're allowed to have a primary focus. And so it's not that I don't speak on behalf of the queer community, it's part of my life. It's not the primary thing that I go, I focus on this. But I do focus on, for me, all of these things need to happen and can all be worked on all simultaneously. That's why it's great to have as many leaders as we can and go, yeah, you can work on that, and how can I support and amplify you, because I'm also the primary megaphone for the people of the global majority and the neurodiverse community, because that's just where I'm focused on right now. So
intersectionality.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It absolutely makes such a difference.
Yes.
To understand kind of how things fit together, and then be able to say, here's what I know. And then when you have when you build that empathy for other communities that you're not part of, but you understand, or you see their struggle and you're learning about them, you run into the problem of empathy fatigue, and just running out of spoons as you're working to advocate and educate yourself about different topics. So sometimes you do need to pick a focus and say, I can't do everything, I can't solve the ecological crisis, I can't solve, but I can be aware that these things are happening, and then I can put my energy toward this piece of that. And, you know, so keeping a balance
Right.
between that intersectionality and being able to focus on the issues that you can truly advocate for.
Right, and it's also, because you use the word, you know, it can be exhausting if you're trying to spread yourself too thin, and so you do have to also go, how do I maintain my energy level in these spaces? And it also, I have friends that, I call it analysis paralysis, where there's so much that needs to be worked on that you just kind of get stuck, and then we drop into despair or sadness or lethargy because we're just like, it's all messed up, burn it all, you know? And so instead of going, what's the next right thing, I try to live in the land of what's the next nice thing, and I love that, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, no, if you hadn't heard that, you may borrow it, because I didn't make it up, somebody else did. But I like that, where sometimes all you can do is just go, I did this bite, and it may not solve the whole thing instantaneously, but I did not do additional harm, and maybe it just affected one person for, you know, 2 hours, but it might have been, oh, you did what you could at the moment.
And acknowledging that these topics and things we are trying to address and face are huge things that stem in many communities, and the history behind that, and taking the time to celebrate the little victories that we have to help keep us motivated and not have that discouragement, and talk about the wins, even when they're small.
Yeah, if we're talking about also, I think, advocacy in our fandom of like the geek community too, you know, I will definitely celebrate like where we are now versus where we were.
True.
I started in 2000, and so I didn't know that my people existed before that. I thought I was the only person who wanted to talk about Star Trek. I thought people watched the show and then they turned it off, and then they went on with their life, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I'd go to school, people would be like, I mean, I watched it. And I'm like, but you don't, like, what? I did not know that there were Trekkies, anyway. But like, we have evolved here so much, and I just think it's been so great. You know, I brag so much about CONvergence and how, like, there's so many things about, like, disability awareness and, you know, I tell people, like, all the bathrooms have signs saying, this is a toilet, anyone can use this toilet. You know, if you have a concern though, and you want to be in a special toilet that you know exactly there's one, and you have to do the work to go find it. But otherwise we're being inclusive to people just using the toilet and washing their hands, and all the pronouns, and cosplay is, you know, costumes are not consent. I mean, these were not things we had. And people in this community stepped up and spoke out about it.
And CONvergence was one of the first cons that really leaned into the don't use gender pronouns if you don't know. And was very, like when they went through the effort to retrain all of us who do panels and moderate things to go, here's how we suggest you do this, and please don't use this terminology and don't do that. And a lot of other cons still aren't really encouraging people to focus that way, and are still using legacy terminology of ladies and gentlemen and these old school things that we're allowed to go, we don't need to do that anymore. And that's why you see these colored sheets around the room.
I forgot to mention those.
Yeah, and you know, and so I'm very proud of this con too, because I first moved here, the first iteration of this con was not inclusive at all. It was very gatekept and quite white, and white male. Like, it was very like old school. And so they've actively done a lot of work, and I like to applaud people too when they choose to do that. Because you don't have to. You can go, here's the way that we want to run this, and here's our audience, and okay, and that's what they're for.
I'll add to that because it's easier. It would be way easier to do things the way it always was.
Right.
And like in government, that's like definitely, and in business, people have that too. It's just, but that's what we do. It's way easier than saying, person with green shirt. It's way, you know, it's like a whole different part of your brains a lot of people didn't grow up with. So, yeah. Anyone else want to add to the fandom advocacy we're seeing, like literally live happening and evolving around us?
Yeah, I think being able to call out problems when we see them, like that's how we improve CONvergence. As an example, we have had people say, so for example, last year I volunteer with CONvergence in the off season to help with various things, and we get feedback from people saying, well, one of the problems with the bathroom signs where they say all gender and we put that over the over the hotel sign is that then someone who's potentially going to use that restroom doesn't necessarily know the amenities inside of it. Are there urinals? Or is there a baby changing table, a changing station? Are there bathroom garbages like in the stalls? Because sometimes that's relevant when you're going to use the restroom. And we heard that and said, okay, how can we adapt? We could put the signs instead of over top, we could put them next to the hotel sign, but that's still not, it's kind of weakening our message with the all gender, and it doesn't necessarily indicate what's in the restroom. There may or may not be urinals, there may or may not be garbages in the stalls. So we made a little check box at the bottom of the sign so that it says, and we'll continue to improve this hopefully, what's in there. Is there a changing station? Yes. So then someone who's looking for a baby changing station will see that, could see that on the sign and they can look for that. So that's an example of one way that, we have to hear the feedback in order to know that that's something that we can improve. And I think being able to hear that in all fandom spaces too, being able to say, you're a part of this space, and to your friends especially, you're a part of this space, and I know that this is not coming from a place of malice, but I noticed that this is a problem. This is a spot that you maybe didn't know that you were potentially causing harm by perpetuating.
I also appreciated when you added in the signs that say not all disabilities are visible. Yeah, I was like,
That's a great.
yeah, so I was like, oh, good on them.
On your
That's cool.
business.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all from feedback that we've heard. And I've only been volunteering with the CONcom for 3 years, but I know that that's kind of how we get these signs that cosplay is not consent signs. People suggest it, saying, well, it would be great if we had these things. And making them visible. This wasn't enough this year, let's do more next year. That kind of back and forth and feedback is so vital. And obviously being able to hear the feedback.
I think that's the biggest thing, is creating that the space has been created that people will be listened to, which initially it was white male gatekeeping, and there was not a lot of listening. But it did just keep evolving, thankfully, because people volunteered and showed up and said, hey, I'm on the CONcom now, we need to listen to this.
Right.
This is important. And also I think culturally across the cosplay world, about girl gamers, like that being what, girls play video games? And being like, we can't gatekeep this anymore, and what are the sales? And it's been the same thing though across all industries, women purchase things, immigrants purchase things, the queer community purchases things, that dollars has helped the video game industry, okay, we cannot just do A, B, and C because we don't have just 15-year-old boys.
Yeah,
not to say anything against 15-year-old boys.
Yeah. I live with a 16-year-old boy, so that's fine. But I do think it's also a matter of, and usually when I'm encouraging people in their advocacy journey, I said you need to be as powerful and outspoken about things that you love as you do about things that you dislike. And so, because a lot of times once you get to the point of there's this groundswell and everybody's bitching about it, that's almost as good as voting for it sometimes, because now other people are just gonna go do it because they wanna go against whatever quote unquote woke thing we're doing, that thing. But if you go, I love this so much, then you're voting with not only your voice, you're voting with your dollars, and I do my best to try and go, well, once I learned that this product or this character or something, I'm gonna go buy it. If I know that, trolls are ruining something on Rotten Tomatoes, I spend money on that thing. And not only go see it, I'm gonna buy this Funko Pop. I'm gonna do this. In my video games, if a female or female presenting character's in it, I make sure I play that character and do that, so that hopefully their data comes out and go, oh no, everybody play this character instead of the traditional ones. If there's a product that comes out and they're doing my sister's very much into the cosmetics and nail polish world, so they came out with some nail polish that was inspired by Storm, so we made sure we spent money on that, so that they weren't oh well, Yeah, we're not doing it again because it just didn't seem very popular.
Also, to like jump off of that, is how much we need to do this in like the digital world of social media.
Yes.
Is that if we see something we like, we can't just be like, oh yeah, it is cool. Like, we really need to help like those
posts,
things,
yeah.
reply them, because it's not that they're getting our thing, it's that we're boosting it, and we have to show the algorithm we're paying attention.
Yeah.
And I talk about that in politics too, like, if you're like, oh yeah, I like that person, scroll, no, we have to like it, because that's the only way, not the only way, but that's a big way of power.
Like it, comment, even if you're like, this is cool, just like it, comment,
and share it with somebody, and that's how we can, but that's how it is in the real life, in real world. Like we talk about convergence, we buy things, we wear our geek garb or whatever, in the real world to help boost the positivity and what we want to see, what we want to see in the world. But we have to continue that, I think.
And I stay my opinions on general things that I appreciate. I have not seen that Madam Web movie yet, but I'm not going to bitch about it preemptively because a lot of people haven't watched it yet, and it's something that I would want to do well because I want them to make enough of those female-driven movies that this could suck. And I could say I don't like it, but right now we don't have enough of them. So I'm just like, I'm not going to use my energy bitching about this thing because it might be terrible, kind of thing. It's not my primary, a primary character of mine. So instead of going, well, how come they don't make better stuff? I'm just gonna, there's just a thing that I've watched recently. I really like it. So I've been telling people I'm only 2 episodes into My Lady Jane, this new Prime series thing, and I'm like, I like that, so I'm telling people about the thing I like, not complaining about this thing that they probably did poorly. Because I'm like, it's worth your time. It's funny, it's this, it's that. I like the way it was, the characterizations and the way it works so far in the first couple of episodes. Let's all watch this together. And so staying on the side of, if you like it, tell it to be, show that you like it. And I think we can do more of that than we used to be able to do in fandoms because we were so used to, we're used to bitching, but we're also used to, I don't want, if I say I like it, then they're gonna tell me I'm not cool or I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And you're not wrong, you like what you like. And, they're not gonna make more of what you like if you let them scare you away from acknowledging that you like it. And that's hard, right?
Firefly,
like whatever you like, you need to go, I'm allowed to like this. And for my reasons, and I don't even have to go deep into why I like it other than I liked it. And if they go, well, you don't understand because you're this and this is why you shouldn't like it. All that, don't need it. I like what I like, and I'm unapologetic about the things that I like these days. But I'm also old, and I'm good with that.
And you can also criticize the things that you like. Like if that can be part of it, and part of engaging with that content too, in a positive way. A lot of times you can do that and sort of uplift the media while still criticizing it, saying this is what we could have done better, but I'm glad that it exists in this form.
And acknowledging that you can be a fan without knowing everything about it,
Right.
without knowing the whole history, and as you learn and grow, like, acknowledging like sometimes you like something and then you find out, oh, it's tied in with something that you don't like, and we can change, right? And as seasons go on, sometimes we liked a show and then another season came out and we're like, I'm done with that.
Your life just may get busy, and I don't have one of those, like, I can keep track of a lot of things. I'm not one of those people that, in any of the things that I love and have been watching since I was a little kid, I still don't process time codes and titles and things in my brain. And some people are really good at that, and I'm like, cool. So I just don't let people get mad at me. I don't let people shame me for the fact that I can't. I'm like, remember the episode that had this and the 7 things and stuff? Somebody will be able to spout that out. And that's cool, and that's it. So I don't let it go, well, I'm not a true fan because my brain doesn't keep track of that. Like, I just don't, but that doesn't mean I don't love it and want it to continue.
I love there's so much more room for that, and that's what we need to do, is I like it because I like it. And we need just to support each other in that. Something else that I wanted to share in the advocacy thing is also kind of greater world and to the geekdom, which I think really we started it here, is body inclusivity. And body presentation, gender presentation or anything has just been so eye-opening. I mean, for me, I think initially it really got out when people were commenting about like breasts being like anti-gravity breasts in comic books and video games, and being like, that's not how the female body literally is when there's not structure around it. And just like that was like a mind-blowing thing for people to be like, well, we can't talk about that, and that's how I drew them. And there was a bunch of pushback, but the power of like women and other people who support body inclusivity were like, no, this actually, we've all wondered, well, this is such a weird thing. But that's just like, I think, gone into the real world of like, you know, not sci-fi, not comic books, not movies, just like more TV characters, especially in the United States. The United States is like, nope, everyone has to look exactly the same. You know, you go to other countries, it's all different, but just seeing that is just, and costuming, and I think about in the show Star Trek Discovery, Tilly is not a big person, but she sure seems like a bigger than life person because everyone is so small in TV that you see her that way. But at least we're getting something. We're getting some body inclusivity in Star Trek.
And I think it's been gone for so long. Like, I was just talking to a guy and I told him I was coming to this con. He's like, oh, well, I could have worn my Kirk uniform, but I'm not buff enough and I'm not this and I'm too short. Nobody's gonna care. And the people who are caring, where they're walking up and saying that, they were gonna nitpick you anyway, even if you did look like you could be that. Because that's why we have jokes about people who've literally gone up to Hugh Jackman and been like, you're not dressed right, you're too small to do this, or you're too short, or you're too tall. So people who are gonna fact check you about it, whether they could do it either, they're gonna do that anyway. You can't really control anybody's biography about what they're gonna write about you and what you like.
Yeah. I stopped doing, trying to do anywhere near screen accurate anything. I just do like inspired by outfits.
Me too. I do as well. That's what I'm like. It's a punchline mashup version of
yeah.
Fair. I know.
Color palette.
Exactly. I live in the world of that was one of the things one of the things we came up when we brought up at the panel is that as part of my advocacy, I like to discourage people to look at other people that we are around as costumes. And so, yeah, the character can be in costume, but I would rather, instead of go, well, I'm Hermione, and then I have to have that, I'm a Hogwarts student, and so I have a thing that's in the world of what I like. So I do that sometimes just to model what it is. And it's more fun, because then you can't, you know, and I go, well, no, it's my approximation of what it is versus somebody going, well, you don't have the right decal and it should be 0.35 centimeters longer. Like, yes, you are correct, right? You know, but look, this is cool, right? And that's where I choose to live.
I would say that like when you were talking about your person that you knew who was like, I was gonna come as Kirk, I could. But I think also reminding ourselves that we are always actually leaders. Like that person showing up. And so of course, there's like the caring on both sides of this. There's the caring and wanting to judge you and say, you know, your thing needs to move over 2 inches. But like, then there's the other side of people caring and noticing you and being like, oh, I could have done that. I have that same build as that person. And they showed up like that. And I don't think anything's wrong with them. I could do this. Like, and saying to your friends, you know, like, oh, that person's wearing that and they're not tall. I thought only tall people could do that. And I think so like, seeing that we all have that leadership capability to show up, and sometimes it's like that fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't think I can carry this off. Like, I took a picture of, I've been dressing up as Wonder Woman since like 2000, and I've made 4 costumes, and they have like slowly gotten bigger.
Right.
Because I've gotten bigger, because I like to eat and be a human being.
As you should.
And that, but I don't mean to hurt anyone who is having issues with food either, so I apologize. But yes, and so it's changed, but also like, so of course as a human being, I'm like, oh, I look different, but I'm also like, but this is an opportunity for me to have fun, you know, do what I want to do, and also, you know, there are people who will see all of us, and they will be inspired by all of us. Like, we are always inspiring other people.
Yeah. Representation in media also translates to representation within the community and within leadership positions within, you know, within the fandom or within CONvergence or within anywhere. You see people doing something that look like you, then it can open up, you know, oh, I could do that. That's something that's attainable for me.
I think fandom has made it happen in media. I think all the writers and the people who work, they're the ones who are fans, and they're the ones who go to these cons, and they're the ones who we don't know who they are because they're one of the writers, they're one of the editors, they're one of the costume, like one of the, not the big name person, and then they go back to meetings and they're like, you know what if we had the person look like this? What if they had this disability? Because they're seeing it in real life, and they're seeing people, let's say, in a wheelchair who's not Professor X. Like, you know, if someone in a wheelchair who's Wonder Woman, they're like, so superheroes, let's see, Doctor Who, we could have some people who want to be in a wheelchair, and that's totally cool. So I think that our fandom is what's led that. I'm just gonna say that. But,
Mayor, I think we have some questions in the
sure, I want to stick to our panelists
I'll
first.
do one thing. So like, events like this and having that community, and also having your community and that sounding board to talk to and reflect, because sometimes we get in our head and overthink it. Like even, I was talking to a friend beforehand that wasn't gonna apply to speak on a panel because they thought they weren't nerdy enough. And I had to laugh at them and say, you're good.
Right.
Now they get to speak, right? But having that sounding board of, that we can talk our concerns through and get over that hurdle of thinking too much about it.
Awesome. All right, we can take a comment from the audience. Person in pink shirt.
Actually, I have a question. So I love Sailor Moon, and then I love Rapunzel from Tangled. That's my Rapunzel, the Colonel says. But I feel like as a person of color, if I was to don like the blonde hair and the big braid, and it's hard to find the dresses and someone of my size, I feel like I would be. It would almost feel like back in the day when they used to do slave trade and you were paid on a thing to be sold off. I am so afraid people are gonna look at me like I'm trying to be something I'm not. Where I just genuinely love these women and I wanted to cosplay them. So I don't know how to get past that.
I mean, when we're in cosplay, we're all being something we're not. Because this is a character that's out in the world.
I will add too that I've already told Kiki that I'm making them a Sailor Moon costume,
right,
custom fit. So like this can happen, but I think the other part of it is how does Kiki take this on?
How do you do that? Right. And so for me, it's, well, here's part of what I like about this character, and here's what I focus on. So maybe the way that you work yourself into it is you start with the hair. And you do the hair first and you go, okay, I got this, I got my dope wig, I got practice with that. And you do that and just a shirt that loves it or it inspires by it or it's the right color palette. And you go, how does this feel? And you wear that around for a while and you go, okay, that feels good, okay, right. And then maybe you do next, you go, oh, well, I have the shirt and I have a skirt that's appropriate to the particular character. And then you get the shoes. And you know, so there's always a little homage to what it is that you can work it into, and then you go, okay, well, I feel good in that, and people ask you some questions, and you do what it is, and then you meet other people, and you figure out how to make the next one. Like you do get a friend that can do the sewing, yeah. So I have lots of things that are like a Star Trek uniform that are not a Star Trek uniform that I can wear out in the wild. Like I have a dress that just looks like a yellow shirt, and then every once in a while a nerd will go, that looks like a Star Trek, you know, I'm like, why, yes it does, you know? And so, especially since you can't always store buy some of these things anyway, that's how you slowly build up your skill set and do it and go, well, what can I do? That, you know, because it's a matter of how you feel good when you do it. So when you put it on, you have to.
Because skill set is also being able to walk in the room, right? It's not just the skill of creating it, it's not the skill of like walking in, let's say, high heels or boots. It's the idea that you can handle what you're wearing. And sometimes handling it means I just don't want to look at people. Like, that's okay too.
Yeah.
That's cool, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, what can you do to make that more accessible and more comfortable for you? Are there tweaks that you can make that make it feel more you? So like, I very regularly incorporate, nowadays I think about my cosplay as an extension of my wardrobe. So am I gonna wear this skirt somewhere else?
Right.
If I'm not gonna wear it except for once a year, one time, like maybe I don't wanna do that. But if it's a piece of something that I can add to my wardrobe, and then every time I wear it, I think, gosh, I look good and it reminds me of this show that I love, and like it's fun, and even if nobody else notices it, or just, you know, a couple people that I know, because I've showed them or told them about it, notice it. Like, I got this little secret just for me of this like piece that's important. So sometimes I have, you know, a skirt that just reminds me of this pattern that's in this, you know, this TV show.
Agreed.
And just incorporating those little parts to make it really feel like me.
Yeah.
And that's when I get the most compliments. Like, I love your outfit. Thanks. I love it too.
Yes, I agree, and I do that. I do a very similar thing where there's just homages throughout my closet, and I decide how much I'm gonna dial it up or how much I'm gonna dial it down. But there's usually some nerd-ish thing on me. It just may not always be. Everybody knows that. Like, I have a couple necklaces that are time turners, and it's always cool when somebody goes, "Is that a time turner?" I'm like, "Why, yes, it is." But I have a full. I'm showing up as my version of Professor McGonagall, kind of thing. So I got the hat and the cloak, and kind of that's pretty much, the rest of it is just, this is what they would have worn on a Thursday. So it's not anything I'm trying to be like specific to any particular scene where you can go, well, in scene this, but it's like, no, this is my version of what it is.
Yes. Ashley, did you have anything to add to the
Yeah,
comfort of like
yes,
cosplay and stuff?
I love all that, and then just acknowledging the opposite side of that, where everyone's not always gonna like everything, and being okay and being comfortable with that. Because you could go out and wear it and you won't have any problem, right? Especially when you're in a safe community like this. But even you step outside those doors, and I was getting voices when I was walking down the street, right? And being okay with that, and acknowledging that, maybe that's a different topic, but people aren't always gonna like how we embrace our nerdom, and we need to be okay with that and be proud of that, because again, we're setting examples and making it okay for other people to do that by being a leader,
Right.
by being who we are and showing up. That is so
Absolutely.
important.
I think too, like, because it is like really scary,
Yeah.
right? So I think having community, I have definitely, like, I had a Barbarella costume that like just barely covered my.
Yes, that was
And,
very true to film. Then. Yes, it is a cheek-driven costume.
Yes, it is. And but I had like a couple people that I was like, I need you to walk around with me. One, because I didn't want to deal with literally anyone touching me, but also like I need to feel like I want to wear this and I love this movie and it's whatever. And I'm cool with it, but I also don't need a moment of vulnerability when I'm alone. And so like you could say that you can call people handlers if they're not in a costume, and they can be kind of more for you in that moment of like
My wing people. That's what it is.
like, can you grab me? I don't want to stand in line, at the bar. Can you get me a drink so I don't have to be there alone, or I don't really want to go? And having a friend you can just be honest with like that, to say, I'm wearing this costume, I'm super nervous, is totally appropriate, because even at CONvergence, it's a safe space. It could be some totally rude person's first day here, and you're the very first person they see, and they are going to say something because they are not a part of our culture yet. And so if you can have people around you to help you, hold you up, and be your community, like we talked about, that will help you get through those things. Yes, I see another question or comment.
Question.
Okay,
So
and then we'll get to you.
in terms of kind of the leadership side of things, being neurospicy, I have a very hard time saying things the way that I want to say them, or like remembering facts and being like, hey, I can talk about this thing, or I can like advocate for this thing, because I will not remember those details because of where my brain is at right now. And so like, do you have recommendations for like almost how to exist in leadership spaces, because there's such a push for like, this is how we communicate, and if you explain yourself too much, then you're seen as this way, or like, the autistic resting bitch face, and like things that I experience that make it feel like it's hard to kind of have some of those leadership.
Because you see it modeled in other people where they have a sound bite and they sound perfect.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what
Exactly.
you're saying? Yeah, I think that the more people, what's the quote? Like, people will remember how you made them feel more than what you said. And people will learn your authenticity. It just does take time. So we have to kind of put in that, I think.
And when like working with my son who's also neurodiverse and hanging out in that space, a lot of what I say, which is unfortunate, my suggestion is also have a couple of masking tendencies that you can go, when in doubt, thank you for sharing that, I need to think on that and I'll come back to you. So what's your version of that? So that you don't have to be rushed or feel like the pressure of I have to say this right now. And so that's really interesting. I would like to think on that more. I'll get back to you. So what's your version of that when you're in that situation where somebody puts you on the spot? And you don't have to have a response right away. And if it doesn't work for you, if they're questioning something. And I think that's a valid one where you're acknowledging whatever they have going on in their brain. But you're also giving yourself the space to respond in a way that is appropriate and comfortable for you. So don't feel like you have to do, like, immediately go, here's the whiplash answer. I'm like, no, like, that may not be fair. So if you need time to think, I think it's fair to go, yeah, no, I get it, and just nod a lot. I do that. I nod a lot, and I go, yeah, I'm gonna have to get back to you, though. So
one thing.
And leaning into your strengths, because
everyone has different.
Yeah, we all. So you have skills that no one else on your team has, and you can highlight that and make sure that you're the go-to person for that. And then also letting them know how you want them to communicate and the space that works best for you. Because I mean, I work with a team of engineers, right? They're all very different, right? And I'm an extrovert, which is pretty rare. And I know that I adjust how I communicate with different people. I know that if I come up and talk to somebody, like some people, that'll ruin their focused work. And other people, I can stop by and we can have a brief conversation, they can get right back to it. So acknowledging that everybody has different styles with how they work, how they communicate, how they're doing all this, and highlighting, communicating what works best for you to set you up for success, and then also doing that for others.
And the studies all show that there are more people, I love the way you put it, who are neurospicy than are even presented, because the way that we take stock of that information and the way that we tell people you're not supposed to acknowledge that, it'll get in your way, it'll make you not a leader, it'll halt your progression in your field and all of these other things. So there's a lot of, more people, we know that our workforce is neurodiverse. We just don't always acknowledge it, and then we pretend that it's a problem when it's not. There's lots of ways that, as Ashley was saying, that you can have minor changes that work and other ways that you can advocate for yourself that are completely reasonable. You're never being unreasonable by going, hey, can we make this minor modification and making that request? But it is also going, well, what do I really need? And then voicing that.
And don't be afraid to bookmark resources for yourself, for your own reference, and to say, well, in the words of this great resource that I really like, and then quote it directly. I mean, you don't have to come up with the words yourself if you bookmark or build a list of those resources to work off of.
And we're actually at time. Okay, we're actually at time. Sorry we didn't take your question. But thank you so much for being here. We're going to be at other panels, so quick, if anyone wants to share, I have a panel tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at 12:30 on geeks and government elected officials who are also nerds.
I have a bunch of stuff.
I know, it's like, it's got a whole page.
Tonight at 10 p.m., let's see, Not Funny Anymore, and you'll be on that one, and I'm on that one as well. And then Saturday at 12:30, How to Be an Ally.
Yes.
Right in this room, both of those.
So I'm on a bunch of stuff, but as I mentioned, our CONvergence edition of Comedy Through the Chaos is tonight at Main Stage at 8:30.
Awesome.
I have Professionalism and Neurodivergency at 3:30, and I'm hosting a sea shanty sing-along tonight.
Lovely!
At 10, and then I have another couple, just fandom ones on Saturday.
Awesome. And I have some badge ribbons if anybody wants to come grab some. Thank you so much for coming, and have a great Friday.